that. Yeah, I don't know if I really care for that lighting. Let's see. Is there a better lighting? Is this better? Yeah, I think that's way better. Oh my goodness. Hi. How's it going, guys? I am here today to make a video that actually has been requested quite a bit. And we're gonna go ahead and get into it. I needed to get out of the house, which is why I'm here. It's one of my go-to places by the beach. Now I have to apologize. I know I was going to start doing this video yesterday, but then I made that my husband doesn't have an inner monologue episode, which honestly still blows my mind. But I know most people are going to think I was over-exaggerating, but I'm going to be honest with you. That kind of shook me for a good 24 to 48 hours. I was not a functioning human being, because I think, like I said in the video, it was as if somebody told me Santa wasn't real, and I had believed in Santa and all that. It was a whole thing. So I had to make that video. I'm glad I did, because it seems like you guys are finding it really interesting as well. I wanted to make a follow-up video to that, where we ask, people without inner monologues ask me questions about how I think, or people with inner monologues asking my husband how he thinks. But I want to give some time for people to comment and leave their comments. So if you guys have questions for either of us, make sure to go to that video. I'll link it above and leave your comment below. But today we are moving on with the program. I'm going to be talking about the things I love about Japan, the things I don't love about Japan, the things I love about the States, and the things I don't like about the States, because I feel like, having lived in both countries, growing up kind of in both countries, I have a pretty good grasp on those issues, and people seem curious, so I wanted to talk about it. Before I make any of these videos, I want to stress that all of this is my opinion. Whether it's good or bad, all of it is my opinion. You guys can always do your research, whatever I say. Don't say that, don't be like, Kit said it, so it must be true, because I'm not that smart, guys. Let's be honest. I don't know enough about the world to be in that super intelligent category where people should be listening to me. But people have asked my opinion, so I'm here to give it. Like I said, we're gonna start with what I like about Japan and what I don't like about Japan. I figured we'll start with the bad and then end with the good. One of Japan's biggest problems is that Japan has a tendency to hold on to very archaic beliefs. And what I mean by that is not about culture or tradition. I think those are fine, those are beautiful. But what I do think when I say they hold on to archaic beliefs is, I think the easiest thing would probably be tattoos. It's gotten better, but it's still looked upon as bad. It's still frowned upon. There are public bathhouses, and if you guys know Japan, you guys know public bathhouses are a pretty big deal in Japan. Where if you have a tattoo, you can't go into a public bathhouse unless you cover it up. And the reason that became a thing is because originally tattoos were seen as something the Yakuzas do. And Yakuza is a Japanese gangster, it's their version of the mafia. So they had pieced together this weird thinking that tattoo, Yakuza. That's why Japan is so against tattoos. However, since we are starting to become more westernized and we are starting to become more global, honestly, and tattoos are becoming more accepted all around the world, we get tourists and people from different countries who wear tattoos, who have tattoos, and they come to visit, and they're still expected to cover up their tattoos, when in reality the only people that have a problem with tattoos are people in Japan. It's not a problem for anybody else except for us, because of what Japanese people have associated tattoos with. I see a lot more younger people these days with tattoos, and I think a lot of that is the Western influence and the influence from the internet. But if I told my mom I was gonna get a tattoo, she would probably bury me 6 feet underground. She would be like, over my dead body, you're getting a tattoo. As a 31-year-old woman, she would still beat the crap out of me if I got a tattoo, because in her mind, tattoo equals bad. I was watching a TV show the other day where they were interviewing a bunch of foreigners, from different countries, China, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Africa. They had a panel of people, and this Japanese host was asking them what they think about how Japanese people view tattoos. And all of them were like, it's ridiculous that you guys are still putting such a bad taboo or a bad label on tattoos. Like I said, it's not really the younger generation that believe that. It's definitely the more older generation that still believes that. So if we were to take that issue and turn it into something bigger, one of the things that was really surprising to me, and I think is a huge, like, why is this still a thing, is in Japan. Let's say two married couple get a divorce. The man in the relationship can go on and marry the next day if he wants to. But in Japan, a woman has to wait 6 months before she remarries. You know, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, I'm sure, but I don't identify myself as a feminist. I'm not coming at this from a feministic standpoint, but I still think that's pretty ridiculous because that takes away from the equality. I would think it's ridiculous if it was switched. Like, I feel like if both parties divorce, they should be able to marry anybody, regardless of if they're a man or a woman. They should be able to remarry, because once you split up, I mean, that's it, you know what I mean? And this goes even further. That's the thing. Not only can women not get married until they have been divorced 6 months, but let's say they start dating somebody and they have a baby with that new person, and they're still in that 6 month period where they can't remarry. By law, that baby would actually be her ex-husband's baby. By law. That has actually been an issue because there's a lot of children who are born during that period of like the 6 months where, you know, the wife couldn't get remarried to her new husband, and they were born, and then by law, they have to be under the family name of her ex-husband. So in Japan, your family name is everything. It's called a koseki, like where you're from, who your family was, all of that is a really big deal. And if you don't have that koseki and that paper proving where you come from, who your parents were, all of that, it actually becomes really hard to find a job. Like it's a really big deal. And there has been a lot of instances where those babies that were born out of wedlock between the woman and her new boyfriend, but because that new boyfriend can't claim his kid and put him under his own family name because that kid technically belongs to the ex-husband. I know this is a whole thing. And the ex-husband does, you know, obviously doesn't want anything to do with the kid. He doesn't want the kid under his family name. Then that kid ends up without a koseki. And there has been a lot of issues where kids without that koseki end up becoming sometimes the bottom rung of society, because you know, he can't find a job because he doesn't have that paper talking about his family lineage. You know, tattoos are like an easy, like, you know, annoyance, right? But then you have this bigger issue, and it's not just those two things. I think Japan has like I said, has a tendency to hold on to some of these archaic beliefs that probably should have been changed a long time ago. So that's one. That's a very big thing that I've noticed, and that's probably my biggest pet peeve when it comes to Japan. Another thing that I find to be an issue, and I think a lot of that is because of my influence coming from America, is individualism. In Japan, from an early age, you wear uniforms, your hair has to be a certain way. I was just talking to my little sister about this because I wanted to talk to her about what she thought about some of the things, because she grew up in Japan. She goes to a Japanese high school, and she said the schools will take it so far, and some schools have gotten better, but her school, she remembers that because she's a half girl, half American, half Japanese, she has lighter color hair. In Japanese schools, you're not allowed to dye your hair. What she had to do when she was signing up for school was she had to prove and show pictures that her hair has always naturally been a lighter color and that she hasn't dyed her hair. Like, she had to send pictures of when she was a kid and show, like, hey, like, I have lighter color hair, I've always had lighter color hair, I've never dyed my hair, and apparently that's a thing. It's one of the reasons why my mom actually never sent me to a Japanese school. She always sent me to an international school, which is more heavily American influenced, because she didn't want me as a kid, as a teenager, growing up in this little bubble, this little box where everybody had to be the same. She wanted me to grow up feeling like I had the ability to be myself, to be more of an individual, to be me, which is a little bit more discouraged, I think, in regular schools here in Japan, and still is. It's definitely gotten better. than when I was a kid, and definitely a lot better than when my mom was a kid, but it's definitely still an issue. And I think that creates an issue a little bit later in life. Japanese as a society tends to like to put things into boxes, and if you don't fit that box or if you don't fit that mold, you're almost seen as an outsider. I think for those people who want to be individuals and who want to be different and who want to experience the world differently from other people, I think they struggle a lot emotionally because that societal idea is that you have to be like everybody else. And like I said, it is definitely better than it used to be, but it's still very much apparent, at least in my, like, from what I've seen and what my sister tells me. And like, if we were to go to bigger issues, right, like I would say on a political level, I feel like in Japan, a lot of the politicians are older people who have been in power for a really long time. And I don't want to say it that way because it makes me sound ageist, and I'm not an ageist. In this case, older does play a part, but here's why. I think a lot of older people have a tendency to not try to stay with the times. You know what I mean? They don't try to understand when things are starting to evolve. A lot of times, well, back in my day, or they're like, it was so much better when I was a kid. It's not that way anymore. Times have changed, and no matter how much you hold on to that belief that was better, it's not anymore. And I think that when you have a bunch of people who hold on to that belief and they're in a position of power, it really sets back the tone for society to move forward, because there's a clash between society wanting to, evolve, and then you have a bunch of people that are trying to hold these people back to keep them in this era that they believe was perfect. Like I said, it has nothing to do with being old or age, because I know a lot of people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s who do keep up with the times and who do, like we've talked about, be like water and move forward with the times rather than just standing back and be like, no, my time was better. Like, there are people who do move forward. And so I don't want to say it's just age, but I think, especially in the case of Japan and the politicians, a lot of these people who are holding positions of power have been holding positions of power for a long, long time, and things have just gotten stale because they're so used to things being one way, and then they don't see the benefit of things moving forward. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but when your country is run by people who probably don't even really know how to use the internet, that's a problem. I mean, I don't know if they do or don't. That's an assumption that I'm making. But I'm like, if they don't know how to use the internet and they're running the country in this day and age, that's a problem. I mean, say what you will about Donald Trump, but at least the guy knows how to work a Twitter. You know what I mean? Because I think the leadership of Japan is trying to hold on to a time that is not existent anymore, that we have moved past. I think it really trickles down to the people, like the tattoos and bigger issues like marriage and divorce, to, trying to keep people in a box. And when I was a kid, and when my mom was a kid, there was a point in time that Japan was at the top of their game. Technologically, as a country, financially, like, they were advanced. Japan isn't doing so hot right now. A lot of what I see and a lot of the reasons why I think that that's the way it is because Japan as a country is not keeping up with the rest of the world, because we're trying to hold on to what made us great before. I worry about Japan, and it's one of those. I love Japan. I'm glad I live here. I love the people. The people are fantastic. The people here are amazing, and it really makes me sad to see that Japan is this amazing country, but I think as a society, from a government level, from a leadership level of the country, I think we are definitely being held back. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan continues to fall back and get left behind. And it's a sad thing because Japan's a great country. I think the biggest thing, and I think the thing that really attributes to, all these issues that I talked about, is really just We have people in leadership positions who refuse to move forward and hold on to archaic beliefs. And since being here, I talk to a lot of younger generations who are, 16, 15, in their teens to 20s to 30s. And so many people, they're frustrated by the archaic ideals. I understand that, especially now, because it's so easy to have access to how the rest of the world is and how America is and how New Zealand is and how all of these other countries are, and then you see us and you're like, I can't even have a tattoo and go to a public bathhouse. And so I can understand the frustrations there, and that's definitely a frustration that I didn't notice as a teenager and something I notice now that I'm an adult. Sorry, I went kind of on a rant there. When you get me started on this, I just keep going. I'll be honest with you though, I think I found more things that I like about Japan than I don't like about Japan. I actually had to think pretty hard on the things that I don't like about Japan, and it was only like one or two things, but unfortunately those one or two things are a pretty big deal. I think what will help Japan ultimately is putting not necessarily, like I said, not necessarily younger people, but people who have the ability to understand the current situation and understand where the time is flowing towards. I think we need to put people like that in power. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter whether they're a man or a woman. That doesn't matter. But what matters is putting people in charge who understand the flow of the time, the evolution of time. People who are looking forward and not people who are constantly looking backwards and trying to get back to what it was before, but people who are trying to move forward and trying to think of things, or trying to look into the future. I think that's really important. I think allowing teenagers and youths from a school level and giving them the opportunity to find individualism, I think that is really important. And I'm going to talk about this when it comes to America, but I think there is a danger of being on the other side of that and having too much individualism. I think that can be a problem, but I think Japan is on the other extreme of that, where people aren't really encouraged to be an individual. Rather, they want everybody to be the same. Like I said, it's getting better, but talking to my sister, it really makes me realize that that's still a pretty big issue. In fact, my sister wrote a school paper, like one of those essay challenges, and she wrote about this topic specifically, about how if we're going to change Japan as a society and allow for more of flexibility and freedom, it has to start with the schools, allowing kids to be themselves, wear the clothes that they want, dye their hair if they want. Who cares if they have lighter color hair? Who cares if they dye their hair purple? Why is that an issue? Allowing people to just be a little bit more themselves rather than trying to conform to a certain societal box. So yeah. Hopefully this whole thing made sense. I think that is what I don't like about Japan. Tomorrow I'm going to be making a video about what I do like about Japan, and let me tell you, that list is pretty much more robust than what I don't like about Japan. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you guys have any ideas or thoughts of your own, please definitely leave them in the comments. The one thing I will say, though, is try to keep things nice. A healthy debate is good, but don't attack people for their beliefs. Everybody believes something differently. The way I think could possibly not be right. It's just what I believe. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in tomorrow's episode where I talk about the things that I do love about Japan. All right, peace. Bye.